Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here, and today is going to be a pod focused on defenders. I did a pod a couple of weeks ago looking at the best midfielders for the next block. Wink wink, Brian Mbeumo came out on top of that, and he's done very well since. And it's felt like in the last sort of handful of game weeks there's a little bit of a shift here around defenders. I think this stems from really at the start of the season, defenders were a big unknown. Obviously, DEFCON had been introduced as something new, and we wasn't sure the impact that would have. A few of us picked what we considered to be DEFCON defenders, the likes of Milenkovic, the likes of Tarkowski, who, based on data from previous years, looked like they would achieve it often. But we didn't really know the power of DEFCON and whether those defenders that got that reliably would be better options than sort of more attacking fullbacks, should we call them, who would get goals and assists and things like that. I think what happened at the start of the year, we had almost a perfect world. It took different managers, different levels of time to adapt. But there was a cohort of defenders early on that basically excelled in everything. So there was defenders getting DEFCON regularly, who also happened to play for teams who kept a good number of clean sheets. And maybe even in some cases, these defenders also got some attacking returns as well. So there was a strong template formed quite early around Senesi in particular. Bournemouth started well. He was getting DEFCON, I think, the first 4 or 5 game weeks. I think he got an assist, I think, early on. Chalobah started very well for Chelsea, and they got some clean sheets. He got some attacking returns. Gahey started well for Palace, same. There was positivity around Van der Ven and all these sorts of guys. And there was a template forming. I think lately there's been a switch away from that. I think obviously Nottingham Forest's slow start meant people came away from those defenders. I think people persevered a bit longer with Tarkowski, but now he's maybe not getting enough clean sheets and his average points per game is not high enough. And there's been a bit of a swing here, I think, towards maybe prioritising clean sheets again, rather than what was there, I think, for a period towards prioritising DEFCON. So I wasn't sure what side of the fence I stood on here in terms of this topic. So I thought it'd probably be quite a good thing to have a look and to see what the current sort of state of affairs are and what my thoughts are moving into the next block. Because I've got a defence that I'm not overly unhappy with, but it is a part of my team that I could look to make a couple of transfers in the next couple of weeks, particularly if, as I spoke about in the AFCON pod most recently, that if we are going to have to use all of our free transfers by the game week 15 deadline to ensure we get the full top up in game week 16, then if our team is in quite a healthy position, quite a strong position, there might be an opportunity to make some transfers that would normally be considered maybe a little bit luxury, maybe changing your budget defender or your fourth defender in your setup sort of thing. So I think it's good to have an awareness here of what might be changing in the defender landscape. Is there a little bit of a revolution? Is there anything massively different? So let's get into it, and we'll have a look at what we've seen recently. So here on the screen right now is data from the last 4 game weeks and which teams are doing well defensively, who's got really good underlying data, which teams are keeping clean sheets, which teams are conceding a low number of shots, and particularly which team are conceding a low number of big chances. Because it's the way I view it, and this is my sort of personal take, when I'm looking at defenders and who I think are going to keep clean sheets, the 2 metrics I look at the most are XGC, for obvious reasons, and big chances conceded. Because you'd expect most Premier League goalkeepers should be able to save a high volume of what we'll call regular chances. Big chances are obviously harder to save, should be converted more often. Looking at game weeks 8 to 11 then, and it's no surprise that Arsenal are the best defence, and I've colour-coded them green for every metric here. So XGC, clean sheets, shots conceded, and big chances conceded. Green is the best outcome. Yellow is pretty good. Orange is maybe average, and red is pretty weak. So they're listed here on the screen right now. The top 9 defences for XGC in the last 4 game weeks, and Arsenal were top with 1.75. Importantly, only 3 big chances conceded as well, and just 25 shots conceded. Clearly now, I think we've known it for quite a long time. I think I've spoken about it on previous pods, that double Arsenal defence, whether that's Raya with a defender or whether that's 2 defenders, I think is certainly necessary, even though the fixtures, and we'll get onto this later, are maybe sort of thinning out a little bit and maybe not quite as strong as they've been in the previous block. I still think double Arsenal defence is good, and I wouldn't put people off owning triple Arsenal defence. Just getting into that point of the season now, we're a bit more fixture congestion. They're in, obviously, the League Cup still. Champions League continues. The FA Cup starts fairly soon, and Christmas is on the horizon. Actually, Arsenal's defence so far has been fairly stable. I think Timber, Saliba, Gabriel and Calafiori has played together as a back four. Feels like 80-90% of league games. There probably is, if there is a risk period where that might change and we might get a little bit more rotation, a little bit more rest, it could be coming up soon. So arguably not the ideal time to be moving into an extra Arsenal defensive option. But if we're getting away from a template defence, maybe something that was quite template before is now not so template. I still think the best solution here is to increase your Arsenal defensive options if you can. So they're very good, and you'd obviously rank Gabriel first, I think, because he's the target of the set pieces and he's getting some DEFCON because he's playing maybe slightly wider than Saliba because he's covering Calafiori, who gets forward more. That's helping with DEFCON. Other than that, I don't think there's a massive preference between the other 3. Calafiori has a lot more competition for starts from Incipi and from Lewis Skelly. Timber has Ben White there. Saliba even has Mosquera there, who's been quite eye-catching when he's been given minutes. So I don't think any of them are immune here to arrest. I'd probably margin the edge with Timber if I was going to get a second one, but I think Saliba probably is more nailed. After Arsenal is Man City. So I think Donnarumma in particular, some people went there instead of Raya because it was a more secure way into the Man City defence. And it's probably been a little bit frustrating. It's 2 clean sheets in 4 for Man City, but arguably could have kept more. A bit like old Man City, they tend to find a way to concede 1 in quite a lot of games, so you don't get the clean sheet points. But they're still the second best defence in the league in terms of XGC by quite a considerable margin. The gap between Arsenal and Man City is almost the same, really, as Man City to the third place team in terms of XGC. Shots conceded, again, they're right up there near Arsenal. Just a few more big chances conceded. So if I was on a wild card now, I still think I would edge with Donnarumma here. I think a Man City defensive option with the fixtures they have coming up is a good idea. They're maybe not as quite as watertight as Arsenal. Maybe they do find a way to concede silly goals that Arsenal don't. But I would still rather have 2 Arsenal defenders with Donnarumma, I think, than Raya with an Arsenal defender and a Man City defender. I think the Arsenal defence is probably a bit more reliable right now than the Man City defence in terms of expected minutes. I know that O'Reilly is proving quite attractive, getting forward a lot from left back. I do think Gavardio will play a lot of games here and is an option as well. But Donnarumma is still the safest way in. Brentford, maybe surprisingly next, 3.79 XGC across the last 4 games. A bit unlucky maybe to only keep the 1 clean sheet. And 5 big chances conceded to second or joint second with Nottingham Forest on this list behind Arsenal. So I think their defence is coming onto radar now. They'll be on radar anyway from game week 13 when they're at home to Burnley. There's other good games coming up for Brentford. So not sure how much they've been considered so far for defensive options. Obviously, Coyote takes long throws. Collins and Van der Berg is quite a safe partnership at central defence. Kelleher's a 4.5 million keeper if you want to go budget. So there's options here. And their underlying data is quite good. The other teams under 4 XGC. So Brentford 3.79. Under 4 as well as Crystal Palace, Chelsea and Brighton. All have kept 2 clean sheets lately. Fairly similar in terms of the big chances conceded. Brighton conceding more shots, though, than Palace and Chelsea. What this is telling me, I think, right now for FPL, so I think if you're looking at the whole defence, the 5 defenders and shall we say at least one goalkeeper, so 6 options. I think ideally here you want 2 Arsenal, maybe even 3 Arsenal. I think is viable. I think 1 Man City is probably a good idea. I don't hate the thought of a Chelsea, but maybe Fofana in particular could be a reasonable 5th defender here if he's 4.4. I think he is first choice alongside Chalobah at the moment. And then Brentford and Palace, I think I would own as well. Palace have been kind of long stays in our team defensively. And the sort of debate continues between Munoz, Lacroix, Richards and Gahey, who's the best. I don't have a strong opinion on that, but I think you want 1. I think I'm put off enough here just to want 2, because they do have a lot of fixture congestion, not a very deep squad. I'm not sure I quite trust them enough to double up defensively. So I'd have 1 of them. And as I said, I think a Brentford is fine as well. The one thing I just want to highlight here is Nottingham Forest. So they are the 7th best defence in the last 4 game weeks for XGC, 4.06. No clean sheets is obviously not ideal. But I said they're joint 2nd with Brentford behind Arsenal in terms of big chances conceded with 5. And that comes when they've conceded 58 shots. I think what we've come to learn from FPL, even dating back to Nick Pope when he played for Burnley, I think Flecken ticked this box last year at Brentford, that the ideal goalkeeper in the game is a goalkeeper that maybe plays for a team that don't score loads of goals, because then you're not rivaling the attacking players for BPS. And ideally you want a goalkeeper that faces lots of shots, so they can get save points, but really you want a load of low XG shots, because obviously they're more savable. The higher the XG, the chance, the more likely it is to go in. So the fact that Forest have only conceded 5 big chances is quite noteworthy here. So if I was on wildcard now, I think Matt Sells would be under serious consideration. He's dropped to 4.8, which is fine. But again, Forest have faced 58 shots in 4 game weeks. So what's that average out to be? What? Test my maths here. It's about 14, 15 per game, isn't it? Clearly, a portion of those are going to be on target. Sells is putting himself in a position to get 2 or 3 save points a game here based on the volume of chances he's facing. Just in save points, we probably expect him to get 2. If he can keep some clean sheets in here, that's obviously a decent haul. And so I don't think Forest, from an attacking standpoint, look like a team who are going to score loads of goals. If they can start winning games 1-0, Forest, which is possible, then I imagine Sells will be in the bonus as well if he's making 5 or 6 saves. 5 or 6 saves, a clean sheet. He's going to get save points. He's going to get BPS, obviously the clean sheet points. He looks like the best goalkeeper in the game to be that total package. I say there's an element of trust here on how many clean sheets Forest will keep. Because if they don't keep very many, then you're only going to be getting 3-4 points a game from Sells for the save points. But for those that have Raya, and I'm one of these managers, Arsenal aren't facing loads of shots, as we can see here, or loads of big chances. He's not really getting many saves, Raya. And certainly not enough saves to get any save points. He's not going to get any BPS, despite keeping clean sheets. So he's basically getting 6-point ceiling every week right now, David Raya. There might be odd occasional games where he can get some save points, but on the whole, he's getting 6 points. If you can have Sells getting, let's say, 2 save points a game and playing, that's 4 straight away. And then he could get BPS, he could get some clean sheets. Over a block of games, Sells probably is likely to outscore Raya here. So again, if we're in a position here where we can, what we'll call, make some luxury transfers between now and game week 16, if the Forest fixtures look good, I think at 4.8, I think Sells is a decent pickup. There's about $1 million difference now between Sells and Raya. He'd be the goalkeeper I'd probably be considering at those price below 5 million. So I don't really have an issue with those owning Raya. Obviously, Arsenal have the best defensive data. He'll keep the most clean sheets. Donnarumma, similar price. Probably won't keep as many clean sheets, but might get some more save points. And importantly, allows you 3 Arsenal players in other areas if that's important. People want Rice right now, Saka right now, maybe 2 or 3 defenders right now. But if you don't want to pay close to 6 million for a goalkeeper, which is understandable, it's not something we're used to doing in FPL, then I don't hate the thought of picking up Kelleher here, because, say, Brentford's underlyings are quite good. He's cheap. You could argue the same a bit for Verbruggen, although I think Brighton's defence is a bit weaker than Brentford's. But Sells, I say, could be the alternative. He's a little bit pricier than Verbruggen and Kelleher, but I think 4.8 is reasonable now with the way Forest have improved since getting the new manager. So yeah, bear that in mind. I'm going to jump on now to individual defenders. And so I think the first thing to look at here is I've listed them in terms of DEFCON in the last 4 game weeks. I know defenders managed 8 DEFCON points in 4 weeks. We got that at the start quite often with Senesi, Tarkovsky and stuff. So there's a drop off here in reliability for DEFCON. But lots of these defenders didn't feature on the last slide. So Konate on 6 DEFCON, no Liverpool on the last slide. Senesi on 6 DEFCON, no Bournemouth on the last slide. Tuanzebe on 6 DEFCON, no Burnley on the last slide. So the only sort of link here between the teams with the best underlying data and a player getting DEFCON is Nathan Collins of Burnley. So 4.9 million. Not really delivering the FPL points. So in 4 game weeks, he only got 14 points, which is 3.5 points per start. But you could argue he's been a bit unlucky here. So the underlying data is good. The DEFCON contributions are good. I think I think Brentford could have decent enough fixtures soon. He's 4.9, which may be a bit pricey for what you want to pay for someone who plays for Brentford. But I think he's a big consideration. I say the other 3 defenders on 6 DEFCON in this run, their team is not particularly high for XGC. Despite that, Konate is averaging slightly more points per start at 3.8. Same for Tuanzebe at the moment at Burnley. The best defender lately has been Dan Ballard at Sunderland here. 4 DEFCON points, so 50% strike rate there. But he's got 26 points, 6.5 points per start, obviously amongst the attacking returns here and amongst the BPS. A topic I'll get into at the end of this pod, actually, around, I'll save it till then, but around the types of defenders that are attacking influences in their team. I say we know about Gabriel right now, but there are others, so I'll get onto that later. Amongst the others that have got 4 DEFCON, Dan Burn, Lacroix, Palace, Van Hecke, and obviously Palace and Brighton both feature on the last slide. Kenny Tete, Virgil van Dijk, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So interesting is that these defenders, they're getting DEFCON fairly reliably, at least say a 50% strike rate. But I think realistically in the game, and this is what we said at the start of the season with DEFCON, if a defender gets it every game, you're looking at around really a floor of something like 150 points. If you're getting between 150 and 170 points over a whole season from a defender, if that's the sort of pacing level they're on, I think that's good. So you're looking at a defender really who can get around 4 points per start. This list, there's only actually 3 that have achieving it. So at the top, we've got 11 defenders here. Across the last 4 game weeks, only 3 of them are averaging more than 4 points. Lacroix, who's got 19 in 4. Van Hecke, who's got 18 in 4. And then say Ballard, 26. So the strength of the DEFCON guys isn't as good here. I say if you look at the first 4 game weeks, Senesi had, I think, 4 lots of DEFCON, 2 or 3 clean sheets and an assist. Don't ask me how many points that was, but it'd have been comfortably more than 20. So kind of what I was talking about in the intro to this pod, the DEFCON guys are doing their bit, should we call it, getting DEFCON often enough, but that's not really translating to big FPL points right now. Someone like Senesi is a good example. People have owned him because of that strong start. He's still got DEFCON in 3 of the last 4 games, but he's only got 12 points. So this is, I think, more of a realistic reflection of the expectations of DEFCON defenders. I think I said at the start we was a bit, we got a bit carried away and got a bit overexcited by the appeal of it, because those DEFCON defenders were getting hauls in other ways as well, which inflated their worth. And I think we went down a path where DEFCON was the top thing to look at. I think this shows now that maybe it's not. Not quite so overpowered, I think, is the best way to put it, because I say they're not keeping clean sheets to the same rate, they're not getting attacking returns at the same rate. And so, yeah, the final thought here is the crossover to the previous slide. So Collins, Ballard, Lacroix, and Van Hecke are all doing quite well for DEFCON lately, and in the defences that are at least looking among the stronger in the league for XGC. So those sorts of defenders are probably ones that should be on radar right now. just move on here to the next fixtures for defences in demand. And I've put 4 teams at the top who I think would be defenders that are naturally a bit more expensive. In the case of Arsenal, Man City, good underlying data. In probably the case of Liverpool and Chelsea, maybe a thought that the fixtures are quite good. So this is a logical hop-on moment to get Liverpool, particularly Liverpool players in. So for Arsenal, this is my colour coding again, based on my own views and based on some data of teams in terms of what their attack has been like and what their attacking XG has been like lately. For example, Aston Villa have ranked quite poorly in terms of XG. So you look at Aston Villa as a fixture and think that's not the easiest because they're 6th in the league, been around the top half of the table for most recent seasons. That would be considered quite a hard game, but their XG at the moment is not very good. So I think over the last 4 weeks, actually worse than Burnley. And across the last 6 weeks, they're still like 17th or 18th. So from a defender, you look at it and think a clean sheet's arguably more likely against Villa right now than what it is against certain other teams. So I've taken that into account as well. So you've got Arsenal here with just the 2 green fixtures in the next 7 weeks between game week 12 and game week 18. A couple of yellows. And then Chelsea's a red and Brentford's an orange. But again, it's Arsenal. I think fixtures don't really count for them, to be honest. I think they're just a set and forget, plug in and play, however you want to phrase it. And you keep them. Man City, I say get game week 12 out of the way away to Newcastle, and then it's a nice run. A couple of greens at home there, Leeds, Sunderland, the West Ham. I think you can expect some clean sheets and maybe not the worst away games either with Fulham and Forest. Palace could be fairly hard and they could concede depending on how City approach that game and how much they allow Palace to play in transition. Possibly a chance Ismail Assar will be gone to AFCON by then, so won't be available to play, which will help City as well. So I like them from game week 13 to game week 18. And I say someone like Gavardio, I think, should be on radar, at least prominent on a short list, but he is quite pricey. Chelsea also with some 3 green fixtures, Burnley, Leeds, Everton. I'm not the biggest fan of Chelsea defenders. I think Fofana is quite interesting at 4.4. I don't think Kukurea and Chalobah are worth it with this fixture run. There's some hard games in here. Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away, Newcastle away is tricky. I would even maybe consider selling a Chelsea defender in game week 13 if I had them. You obviously keep them for Burnley this week in game week 12. Then on to Liverpool. No red or orange games here in the next 7. So I can see why they're appealing. It's green, Sunderland at home, Leeds away, Wolves at home, and then Forest at home, West Ham away, Brighton at home, Tottenham away. I put yellow, but equally other people might view those as green. So it's a nice run. The issue we've got here is that Liverpool are unstable in defensive shape. I think the DEFCONs will become less reliable. I think at least with Van Dijk in particular at the start of the year, he was getting good DEFCON, which was maybe masking how bad defensively Liverpool were and how few clean sheets they were keeping. The clean sheet probability has to go up in this run, but I think the DEFCON likeliness goes down for Van Dijk. So are you prepared to put your eggs in this basket that he's going to keep enough clean sheets to justify the price in these next 7 weeks? He could. I'm on the fence with this one. I can't quite work out how Liverpool's defence will be. Will they improve for having Alisson back? Will Arne Slot tweak things tactically a little bit to make them a bit more defensively resilient? Or will he think we're just going to score more goals than you and go all out attack almost and leave the defence more exposed? I'm not sure. Van Dijk obviously does have goal threat. Arguably should have had a goal against Man City that was ruled out for Robertson being offside. I can see him, why people would want to own him here as again, just a little plug-in set and forget sort of player for the next 7 weeks. I don't hate it. And he's quite prominent on my shortlist at the moment as an option. I just need to make a decision really on how much I trust this Liverpool defence, because they didn't even appear in the top 9 teams for XGC lately. So it's risky to trust the clean sheets even against teams here that are inferior to them. At the bottom are 4 teams that are maybe what we call mid-table to bottom half teams, not trying to do them a disservice, and 4 teams that ranked well on both of the last 2 metrics. We had defenders that got DEFCON and teams that were ranking prominently in terms of XGC. So Crystal Palace first, and the only team here on the whole slide with 4 green fixtures in the next 7. Wolves away, Burnley away, Leeds away, Tottenham at home. Again, DEFCON is fairly well spread. The team is quite settled, even though there's a lot of fixtures close together. I don't like the thought of owning 2, but for many reasons it makes sense, particularly if you want to chance Munoz as one of your 2 defenders. And I think it's quite an interesting choice for someone that wants an extra premium now and is picking between, for argument's sake here, Gvardiol, Van Dijk and Munoz. They're not massively different in terms of price here. I think it's quite a hard pick because I think Man City's defence is the most reliable. Good for Gvardiol. Liverpool have the fixtures, and Van Dijk has some attacking capability and more DEFCON probability than Gvardiol. And then Munoz can get some DEFCON here and there. It's obviously very attacking. And I say 4 green fixtures. So if it was a choice between those 3, I think that's quite hard. I think you want one of the centre-backs is probably a good pick-up here if you don't own them now. Lacroix, Gahey or Richards. Richards obviously very cheap. Gahey, I was about to say the most nailed, but Lacroix I think played every minute of every game so far. And Gahey's obviously was injured for the last game. Not sure what the return date of that is. Maybe Lacroix is the best pickup right now. From Palace. Brentford, I say quite interesting. Nathan Collins was the best defender in terms of DEFCON lately. The fixtures are fairly good. I say Burnley at home 13, Leeds at home 16, Wolves away 17. I don't hate him if you want to put him as part of a rotation here. If you wanted to say, for example, have Raya in goal, have Gabriel in defence, have a Palace defender, and they're almost play every week defenders, those 2, the Arsenal and the Palace. If you want rotation for the 3rd defender, maybe Senesi's included in that, maybe another DEFCON guy, Joachim Anderson is included in that. I think you could put Collins with them and rotate. I'd say there's some nice fixtures here in the next block, and based on current form, he seems logical. A bit the same for Van Hecker at Brighton. I think Brighton's defence isn't as reliable as Burnley's. I think Van Hecker probably doesn't have the same goal threat as Collins. Probably not as reliable for DEFCON versus Collins either, and the fixtures are a bit worse. Just the 2 greens here for Brighton. So I think Collins is comfortably ahead, but Van Hecker is cheaper. And I don't think should be discarded. He might be sort of an under-the-radar pick here for the next block. And then lastly, Sunderland, no green fixture till game week 18, but a couple of weeks here where you could play them. Probably have to be moving for them now, though, with Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, because then it gets a bit scruffy after that, placing Liverpool and Man City both away. But I say Ballard ranked well. And if Sunderland are going to compete in games, keep quite a good XGC, and certainly keep the goals conceded column down, even if they lose by 1 or 2. A 2-0 loss, a 2-1 loss or something wouldn't be the worst here if Ballard's getting DEFCON and maybe show something from an attacking set piece. So I wouldn't completely rule him out. Looking at defenders overall then, so I've tried to colour code them, most of the defenders we've discussed here, and put them in some sort of preference order in the same way I did for midfielders recently. Gabriel I still think is the best defender to own. I've tried not to double up on teams. I know that Gvardiol and O'Reilly are both on here, but for most other teams, I think I've only just included 1 player. So I think in most cases, it's fair to block them as a team rather than an individual player. There's not a lot in it between Lacroix, Gahey and Richards. Not loads in it necessarily between Collins and Van den Berg, although Collins is better. Not loads in it between Van Dijk and Konate. I have tried to put the better one on here. I do think Lacroix is better than Richards. I do think Collins is better than Van den Berg. I do think Ballard's better than Alderate, Mukiele, etc. But this is roughly how I'd rank them. So Gabriel first. Team defence I put as a green. Fixtures a yellow for Arsenal. And DEFCON has dropped off a little bit lately. So orange, but that could pick back up. Clearly, if you don't own him now, he's the best defender to go and get. Lacroix in second and Collins in third, followed by Senesi, Van Dijk, Ballard, then Gvardiol, Chalobah, and Van Hecker. I say colour coding on the screen there in terms. I tried to give them all a colour between green, orange, yellow. Sorry, green, yellow, orange, and red, best to worst, based on the current state of their team defence, the current sort of propensity to get DEFCON, and how difficult I view the fixtures to be. Just some final thoughts then in the box to the side here to finish. There has been a shift. I think that say at the start, I think those defenders that got DEFCON did feature for teams that were among the best for XGC. That's now not the case. So we are kind of in a position a bit more where it's almost pick your poison. What's your priority going to be? Are you going to target a team that you think's got a higher probability of clean sheets and chase the extra points, 4 points available, obviously, for that? Or would you rather still pick the DEFCON guys who might not keep as many clean sheets, but maybe their points are more predictable? I've tried my best by going against the DEFCON guys and trying to favour clean sheets and attacking returns. I've had Romero for a block. I've had Malik Tiao now from Newcastle, and it's not really working. Those defenders are more than capable of getting 2 points quite often because DEFCON is unreliable. And although you look at fixtures and think there's clean sheets here, they don't get them. They end up with 2 points. So there is an element of safety that picking a DEFCON guys probably does at least give you at least often 4 points. And obviously that's more than 2 points. A couple of things to consider though, just to finish, and it's not a big feature of this pod, but just a sort of a subtopic, which I could go into in more detail in a different pod if there's an appetite for it. But 2 things to consider here. One is play styles and which defenders are directly set piece targets. So we know Gabriel now is the target of all Arsenal corners and free kicks. Rice looks for him, Saka looks for him. And obviously if it's aimed towards him and he wins the header, that could end in a goal or an assist. And I think we know that what we'll call the meta of the league right now, there is a shift in what is the way to play football towards set pieces, dead balls, and sort of more physical football, should we call it, and more direct long ball football. So those players that can win a lot of headers in either penalty box will do quite well. This sort of opens a door, I think, for someone like Ballard, who Sunderland don't have the best games. But so if they're conceding 2 goals a game, he's getting DEFCON. And we know that Sunderland are going to be somewhat reliable on set pieces for goal threat. If they're being aimed towards Ballard, his capabilities of getting attacking returns are going to be higher than others. And I think we are noticing that with teams now, that they're not putting corners and free kicks into an area and it's almost pot luck which defender is going to attack it or which striker is going to attack it. I think there's genuinely so much work being done on set pieces and so much focus on them, and long throws fit into this as well, that if the main target of these deliveries are defenders, then owning that defender is a good idea if you can do it. So Leeds do it with Joe Rodon, Sunderland do it with Dan Ballard, Arsenal do it with Gabriel. I haven't worked it out for every team yet. I don't know who Palace aim for. Do they aim for Mateta from their corners, or is it a Lacroix or someone like that coming up from the back? The Liverpool target Van Dijk with every set piece, it would make sense to. But I think these defenders could be worth it here because I say there's not a lot in it between DEFCON guys versus fixture guys versus sort of clean sheet probability guys. So where is the edge? It might be in just pick the defenders who have more aerial threat. And something else to also consider, I just mentioned very briefly there about the football meta changing. I think we've moved away a little bit from inverted fullbacks. We've moved a bit away from up and down the touchline wingers, fullbacks. We had it last year with Robinson and Kirkes and people like that. It's interesting to me that in the past, the best teams have played with tactics and played with a method to give themselves the best chance of winning a game. So if you look at Man City at their peak, the tick-attacker football, the 70% possession, the suffocating the defenders into a deep block and just playing the whole game basically in the opponent's half. That way of playing definitely increased Man City's chances of winning the majority of games. Of course, they could still lose odd fixtures. A team might hit them on transition here and there. A team might have a good day from set pieces. Man City found a way to lose many Champions League games at pivotal moments in what I would call moments. But they were so good in the league was because their playing style, I would say, put their winning probability about 70% most weeks. I even think last year, the way Liverpool played and generally what the meta was in the league in terms of play style, the best teams still had a comfortable advantage in winning most games, 60% plus. They had the best players. They used their resources well. They had fairly good tactics and the opponents weren't really ready to deal with it. What I think about this year is lots more games have become 50-50 because a lot of teams have improved off the ball. Lots more teams now willing to change the way they press. Maybe it's a bit more man marking. Maybe they're not so keen to go all out attack. Maybe it's causing too many injuries. Maybe they're just happier to defend in the deep block or the mid block. But teams are proving harder to break down because they're a bit more focused, shall we say, on defending in good shape. The pressing structure is a lot better. So again, players are finding it hard to break them down. And almost the good teams are not, of all the things that make them better than the opponent, the extra resources, the deeper squads, the ability to play more expansive tactics, play out from the back, all these sorts of things. They try and suffocate the opponent in their own half. This isn't really being deployed by many teams now. Man City's press is as sort of lackluster as it's ever been under Pep Guardiola. There's no pressing from the front, really. City are way more likely to sit in a deep block. Liverpool are very open without getting loads of pressure on the ball. Arsenal do get a lot of pressure on the ball, but maybe just don't maximise that enough. I don't know. But it feels like now that you can see by the league table the sort of teams that are up there challenging, that I would say a lot more games now in advance, if you ask me to predict the winner, are way more 50-50 than what they should be. And even a good team, shall we say, the teams that in the past would have been 60-70% likely to win the majority of games, Arsenal, Man City, they're probably the best two teams in the league at the moment. But they're not 60-70% likely to win games. If I go back to this last slide and look at what Arsenal have got here, they should beat Tottenham. I'd probably put them about 60% to win that. I think Chelsea is quite a 50-50 game at Stamford Bridge. Even Brentford, if Arsenal sit back in a deep block and allow Brentford to take loads of long throws, you're opening the game up then to variance and moments. Of course, a long throw might be headed in, or Raya might make a mistake, or something like that. It could be a game like we've just seen from Arsenal against Sunderland, which they didn't win. And Brentford will stack up against them physically and structurally. That's not, if you said to most people, what are the odds on Arsenal beating Brentford at the Emirates? I think a lot of people think Arsenal are heavy favourites for that game. Probably, again, 65-70%. I don't think it's the way the game's being played right now is that. So more games like that reduce the winning edge, should we call it, for the best teams, should mean fixtures are a lot less predictable. If they're a lot less predictable, it's going to be harder to anticipate clean sheets and things like that. So just be aware that, I think it's quite clear that most people know the standard of football has changed and the style of football has changed and what's in vogue is different. But what impact does that have on fantasy? What impact does that have on predicting clean sheets, on predicting attacking returns? I said it's harder to break down these better structured deep blocks. There's more reliance on set pieces. Does that mean we want to get more corner and free kick takers in our team? It should do. Does that mean we want to get more players who are the target of these set pieces in our team? It probably should do. Where I think in the past we've looked at, again, looking at a particular pool of players, in the recent block, there was a surge towards Iliman Ndiaye, towards Bruno Fernandes, because they were fairly attacking. And of all the attacking players in the league, they also happened to take penalties and got DEFCON. So they were considered a bit of what I call a Swiss Army knife in terms of getting points. They had so many routes to points. I think we need to be aware of this for defenders now, that if there's a defender that's the target of the set pieces in a team that could keep clean sheets and that defender gets DEFCON as well, that might be the Swiss Army knife version of that. And I've mentioned, say, Nathan Collins a few times here. He's 1.2% owned, 4.9 million. He could be someone that ticks that box and a bit of a differential for this next block at a time when the game is becoming a bit more template again. He's definitely firmly on my radar as someone I could be bringing in by game week 13. And I probably should stick to it because I still haven't bought Thiago in yet. And obviously in a pod I did 3-4 weeks ago now, I made a big point in highlighting him and why we should all own him, even though it messes with team structure and causes issues around price snobbery and things like that. I still thought we should be getting him in. I delayed and he's done very well. Maybe Collins happens to play for Brentford as well, could be the next version of the same. That's it for this one. been a bit longer than I expected, to be honest. But yeah, thanks for listening. I'll get another pod out next week before the game week 12 deadline, probably looking a bit more about my moves and a few other sort of talking points, and maybe giving some opinions on players that the community want to make transfers on. But until then, yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers.